Hello again, or I guess potentially hello for the first time. If you didn't watch the first video, totally fine. Just going to continue with some of these questions. Honestly, they've been great so far. So, Revere asks, can you provide more instances of how teachers might incorporate culturally responsive teaching methods into classrooms with a variety of students, particularly those with resource constraints? Okay, so my first thought, honestly, incorporating culturally responsive teaching methods, to me, I feel like that speaks to indigenization, decolonization efforts in the curriculum. I also think of anti racist education resources. And if you were to go to BC campus, which is the sort of you probably know this, you may know this rather, it's the BC provincial body that deals with e-learning in higher education throughout BC. And among many other activities and resources is a set of um, highly excellent indigenization resources, and as well, for sure, you'll be able to find on their website resources which deal with how to promote EDI efforts in your classroom. So, where I would go with this is a lot of these resources take the form of OER, right? Open educational resources. And normally, generally speaking, these have a license, a Creative Commons license, and you can look up Creative Commons licensing. It's pretty straightforward. What it means is that by placing a certain type of Creative Commons license on certain curricular materials, certain curricular resources, it provides, under certain conditions, the ability for the user to adapt those materials, but more importantly, to then share their adapted works, their adaptations, as it were, with other educators or whomever, as long as the terms of the license, typically attribution, but sometimes others as well. So as long as that is respected, you have the ability to take those resources and then make them your own. So what I would suggest is go looking for EDI OER, equity, diversity, and inclusion, open educational resources. There are lots of repositories of open educational resources. So this is all to say that that would be my starting point, but my context and approach is probably fairly different than yours. Daisy, were there any available ways for students, if they wanted to learn more how to apply EDI in their future careers? I guess I'll defer to what I just spoke to Ranveer. Um, Open educational resource repositories would be my starting point because my background is in educational technology. Who feel strongly that some pretty good specific Google searches would assist with that. I'll also put it out there that checking in with your education subject librarian at Thompson Rivers. I haven't worked at TRU for a while, but I know for sure that the library staff is awesome. They would be more than happy to show you the resources that exist at our institution, TRU, which would pertain to that. You may then take those resources and sort of see what you can do to make them your own within the realm of law and copyright and intellectual property and so forth. I tend to look at things in terms of curricular problems and curricular solutions. That's my bias. Okay. Talita, with the growing popularity of online education, what strategies do you think are essential to ensuring that distance education is inclusive and equitable for students? I could spend a lot of time on this. Uh, I really, um, but I think my first thought is again to kind of just defer to what I've already said a couple of times. Open educational resources that deal with equity, diversity, and inclusion. I also would say, from an instructional design standpoint, don't underestimate your own knowledge and skill and ability when it comes to creating resources. I mean, when I kind of first jumped into being a teacher 18, 19 years ago, I sat down at the computer and I used Microsoft Word or, whatever, pretty sure that it was Word, to come up with worksheets because that was, the format that was most appropriate to the setting I was in. And then I kind of built them up. You trade with your fellow teachers, your fellow educators. You see what they have. You ask them, is it okay if I use this? Is it okay if I change this? And eventually you kind of have your own traveling package, as it were. So don't underestimate your own nascent, possibly, but definitely powerful abilities to create these kind of resources yourself. A DIY approach. Again, that tends to be my bias, but um, yeah, hopefully that sort of helps. Okay, and now Connie. In your experience, what are the most effective strategies for creating? Oh, I'm sorry, Connie. Sorry to cut myself off while I'm speaking to Connie. Talita, just one more thing in terms of this specifically online. I think low bandwidth teaching strategies are extremely helpful. That is to say, doing online design such that it's device agnostic, so to speak, or platform agnostic, doing um, educational activities and design that are necessarily inclusive by minimizing the technology threshold needed, right? Because if you're talking about distance education, there may be individuals who, for instance, live in remote or distance, places that we would consider remote, where they simply may not have high power internet available. So it may be a slow internet connection, or it may be something where individuals would go to a library or another center and access the materials, download it, take it home, or whatever. So things that rely or strategies that rely on streaming heavily or synchronous so-called streaming with full I guess, bandwidth usage, right? High amounts of video, high amounts of digital content. If you can reduce the size and the amount of those elements, then you're necessarily going to reach more people. Again, hopefully that makes sense. Connie, again, Connie, what are the most effective strategies for creating truly inclusive environment where all students feel their perspectives are valued, particularly in situations where conflicting viewpoints arise? This is where having good structured learning activities take place. So, having, for instance, group works that encourage people to work collaboratively. And there's lots of strategies for group work, including assigning roles. So sometimes you'll have a note taker, sometimes you'll have a researcher, sometimes you'll have the the person who writes up the first draft. You might have the person who brings in the contrary opinions. There's lots of ways to go about that. So once certain roles are assigned and people are then kind of required for everyone to participate in order to be successful, that is somewhat of a motivator, I think. And similarly, having a really well written course outline or syllabus, including a equity, diversity, and inclusion statement, including an indigenization statement, including an expectation of the types of participation that will be required to be successful. And these are things that are all squarely within the control of individual educators. I don't want to go too far further on that just because it could, it's context dependent, basically beyond what I've just kind of described. Wow, that was not as many questions as I thought I would get to. I'm going to do one more of these videos. And yeah, thanks a lot for checking them out so far.